Welcome everyone to my how-to video on the opportunities section of your SWOT report. So this is the opportunities section of your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats report. Okay, so here's the content I'm going to cover. Most of it is very similar to what you have heard for the other sections because you want to be consistent. So first off, I would like to emphasize that, in my opinion, the opportunities section is the most difficult section of a SWOT report. And that is because it is the only section that talks about its kind of content and its kind of customers. All the other sections, strengths, weaknesses, and threats, are all about our current customer demographics. Strengths are things that our current customer demographics like. Weaknesses are things that our current customers dislike. Threats are things that discourage, things that outside of our business that discourages our current customer demographics from coming to our business. However, the opportunities section is the only section that talks about customer demographics who are not our current target demographics. So it is just as important for this section as it is the others to know who our current demographics are, because you can't identify new or potential customers without first knowing who our current customers are. Okay, so every paragraph in the opportunities section should be talking about who else. That is what you're answering. Who else can we get? So this would be customer demographics that we would be able to find access to. Customer demographics we currently are not serving. And customer demographics who would value something that we provide. Okay, so here's some further explanation of what you're doing in this section. So this would be new customer demographics we could attract. Okay, you wouldn't want to go after groups of consumers that really don't like our brand. So if you want to attract people who really like karaoke, but you are writing your report on, say, a sports bar, those things may not go together. So make sure you're targeting new customer demographics, so not our current majority customers, and we could attract them reasonably. Any opportunities would draw from aspects outside of our business's current functions. So to access these new customers, we may need to find partners, that sort of thing. And so basically in the body paragraph of your opportunities section, you should be answering these questions. Who could we attract? So who is the who else? So you should describe who they are. What is their demographic? How many of them are there? So if you're looking at a local community, then you should draw from census data. If it's online users, you should look at research showing who buys your kinds of products online. So how many of them are there? And then how much do they typically spend on our kind of product or service? So what's their spending power per month, per year? How does that compare to our current customers? So are they big spenders compared to our current customers? Are they more on the shopper savvy side? And therefore we want to identify what this target demographic values in our industry. So once you describe who they are, how many of them are there, how much they like to spend on our products, then you should also do some research, either primary or secondary, to identify what they like. So if you are doing a report on a movie theater, you would want to find out what this group cares about when they decide to go to the movies. Do they care about cheap ticket prices the most? Do they care about having lots of concession stand items? Do they care about having fancy 3D? What do they value? And so you would need to do some research here. Secondary research, so database research might be more helpful with this, because primary research on this could take a long time, more time than we have. But you need to identify what they value based on the research so that you can draw your paragraph to a conclusion, making a recommendation. So you would make a recommendation for how they can target this new customer demographic by saying, okay, well, this group of people, college students, for example, really value cheap ticket prices. So my concluding sentence would say something like, to draw in more college students, we should, have more specials during times that college students are free. Okay, that would be a recommendation. So you see it's a direct link between what that demographic values and going after them. Okay, so those are the answers, those are the questions you should answer in your paragraph about each opportunity. So all of these questions should be within a single paragraph, and you should address these questions for each opportunity and put the answers to these questions all in one paragraph. It would be good, just like the other sections, to have at least 2 to 4 points. Probably don't want to do more than 4 points for a report of this length, and you definitely need more than one. So again, if you only have 2 opportunities, make sure that they are obviously convincing, really great opportunities for this business. They fit really well to the identity of the business, and you have really good research for it. Overall structure should look like the other sections. You should have multiple paragraphs. So for each topic, so let's say you have 3 opportunities, each of those 3 opportunities should have its own paragraph. And each of those 3 opportunities, you should answer these questions for it. It is up to you if you want to have a mini intro to the opportunity section. So what this is basically 1 or 2 sentences introducing your 2 to 4 topics. Okay. However, having a mini intro is optional. If you want to have a mini intro in the opportunities section, it would be the very first paragraph underneath the section title of opportunities. And then you would skip a line and start your first body paragraph on one of these topics. But if opportunities has a mini intro, all the other sections should have a mini intro. So you would have one for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. However, it's not necessary. So if you don't have one, if you don't have a mini intro in opportunities, you shouldn't have one in strengths, weaknesses, or threats. Another optional thing is having subsection headings. So every section, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, should have a heading similar to this. But you also have the option of labeling your paragraphs. So this would be a subsection heading. So let's say you wanted to label each of your topics. You could have a subsection heading labeled, let's see, college students as an opportunity. So you would label each paragraph its topic. And that would allow your reader to find the information more quickly. Okay. Other than that, each body paragraph should follow our logo structure. That's the PEC order. So start, the very first sentence of each body paragraph should be a premise answering what is the opportunity. After that first sentence, you should talk about that opportunity in your evidence. And so this is where you include answers to these questions. They all go into the evidence of the paragraph, proving that this would be a great opportunity. And then the last sentence of your paragraph should be your concluding thought. And so remember that a conclusion or a concluding thought, concluding sentence of a body paragraph, simply connects that topic or that premise to the overall purpose of a document. So remember that the overall purpose of the SWOT report is to make a recommendation to the business about what they should do next to grow. So I would take this topic, so the opportunity is attracting more college students, and make a recommendation for how we can do that. So as I mentioned earlier, let's pretend that the research tells us that college students value cheap movie tickets. If my business is a cinema. And then in my concluding sentence, I would say to draw in more college students, we should offer discount tickets at times that college students are most available or most likely to go out. Okay, and that would be your concluding sentence. So if that was my concluding sentence, I would also want to make sure that somewhere in my evidence I talk about um, when students are more likely to go to the movies. So that would be one of the values. And so any conclusion that you make, any concluding sentence of a paragraph should be logical. That means somewhere in the evidence there's a clear reason why you're making that particular recommendation. So if it's unclear why you're making that recommendation, that's an issue with logos. It won't seem logical. So that's, make sure you have a logical progression. Your premise claims that the opportunity will be good for us. You prove that with the evidence. You prove that we have a means by which to access that opportunity, and then you draw it to how we should do that. Okay. You should also make sure that your opportunity section relates to both the intro and conclusion sections. So I'm going to talk about the conclusion section first. So this would be the very last section of your report. And basically what you can do is to brainstorm what your overall recommendation should be. So that's what you're writing in the concluding section. You are telling your reader overall, based off of all the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, the best recommendation moving forward is this one thing. So you make an overall recommendation and you describe how points from the rest of the SWOT support that recommendation. But how do you decide what recommendation to make? You can add up all of these mini conclusions and look for patterns. And then the pattern tells you what to recommend at the end. So I'll go over that again in another video about intros and conclusions. But that's why these concluding sentences are so important, because it'll make it so much easier for you to come up with your overall conclusion. So that's how you tie your opportunity section to the concluding section. The intro should tie to your opportunity section by introducing all relevant topics about our business in the intro. So the intro section you'll be writing for me is basically just an overview of the business without any arguments. And so the key things that are going to be most important that you definitely need to write in the intro is a description of our current target demographics. So if you write who our current target demographics are in the introduction, then all the other sections can talk about what attracts them. And this section, it'll be very clear when we're talking about new customer demographics, because we've already heard about our current ones. Okay, and so that's how you can set up the connection between the intro and the opportunity section. Other things that the intro will allow your opportunity section to do is, if the intro is introducing everything about your business, then when you say, oh, we should have discount tickets for college students, that should be something we're not already doing. Okay, so if it's something listed in the intro that we're doing, it probably doesn't belong in the opportunities section, because we are already doing it, and opportunities are things we are not yet doing. Okay, so now I'm going to take us over and look at an example that I've commented on. So to do that, I'm going to return us to our course Moodle. So here it is. And you want to scroll down and click on week 5. This is where most of the content for this project is. And you can see that I've got it organized by topic as opposed to day of the week. And so under examples, you want to click on this Word document here labeled SWOT Example Commentary. And all this is a few comments of mine about the skills I just showed you for the example on Deer 72. So if you click on this link, this will pop up, and I'm going to scroll down to our opportunities section. Okay, so I have some, went a little too far. I have basic topics here. So this section does have a mini intro. That's what this very small paragraph is. And it basically just introduces the topics that this section will talk about. First topic is e-commerce, and then a stronger presence within the campus community. So those are the two topics this section talks about. The first sentence doesn't really help us very much. It basically just says we looked for opportunities. Well, that's a waste of space, so I took that out. It also begins with first person, and you don't want to do that in a SWOT report. So these SWOT reports are very formal reports, and so we are not the topic of this report. The business is the topic, or the opportunity is the topic. And so oftentimes if we insert ourselves into this kind of writing, we end up wasting sentences. We begin with first person and then end up just bringing up the topic. Instead, move the topic to the beginning of the sentence and then say something about it. So for example, the most likely opportunities for Deer 72 includes, and then it lists them. So this second sentence is a much better example of a thesis than this first sentence, because this first sentence, as a result of using first person, just ends up bringing up the topic of opportunities. All right, so put your topic at the beginning of the sentence and then say something about it, eradicate that first person. Okay, so I'm going to be looking at mostly just this first body paragraph here and the logo structure, so premise, evidence, and conclusion. So the two things I'm going to be grading your opportunity section for the most are, does this content belong here? Is it actually an opportunity? Who is the opportunity? That's the first thing I'm going to be looking for. Second thing I'm going to focus my grading on is logo structure, so this body paragraph structure. So having a clear premise, having that premise completely and sufficiently proven with reliable evidence, not Wikipedia. And then are you drawing that to a conclusion, answering our overall question about what would you recommend? Okay, so let's take a look. So this is where the original began. The latest e-commerce report from the U.S. Department of Commerce reveals that online retail sales have gone up 14.7%, so on and so forth. This is not a premise. This is evidence. So we need a sentence that introduces the overall argument of the paragraph. So how we do that is you begin the sentence by the topic, by including the topic, and then you end it by saying how it's going to be an opportunity. So the topic of this paragraph is expanding into e-commerce. So you put that at the beginning of the sentence in this example, and then you say how that will create an opportunity for Deer 72. So by expanding into e-commerce, Deer 72, that's the business, would be able to reach who? Who is the opportunity, okay? And so this premise tells us exactly what we have to prove in the sentence. So just remember that formula. A good premise starts with the topic and then tells us how it meets the criteria for an opportunity. Then we need to prove that. Based off of the intro, we should know already that Deer 72 isn't making sales online. So we don't have to prove that. That should already be set up in your reader's mind. What we need to prove is that e-commerce is going to be profitable, and we need to know who we would be drawing in as new customers, because if we were only targeting our current customers, that's not an opportunity. Okay, that might be a solution to a weakness instead. Okay, so let's take a look at how they do. So they have some evidence about growth, which basically shows that it is profitable. So that's good. That's some good evidence. And then the main thing that is missing from here is the second part. So they prove that e-commerce is profitable, but I have no idea who we would be gaining. Okay. So all of these questions from my outline are missing about the who, and I'm going to be very strict about this. I want to know who does most of their clothing shopping online. How many of them are there? So this might actually be answered by the data about growth, which is fine, but not about this particular group, because I don't know who this particular group is. How much do they typically spend on our kind of products or services per month or whatever? So how much does this particular group spend on clothing online? What do they value? So this might be having the website be really easy to use, or having photos that show clothing on a model that looks like them. Whatever they value, And then that should lead me to my conclusion. So most of the evidence is missing from this paragraph, and that is a problem. So this paragraph has not proven to me like that this would actually gain us a different group of customers, and that's what it needs to do. So that's the first thing so that is a problem in both of my categories. It doesn't quite convince me that this point belongs in this section, and it's missing sufficient evidence. Okay. And then, of course, the last sentence should be a recommendation for how to target that particular group. So let's say it's online shoppers, and we discover online shoppers of this style of brand is somewhat different than our current customers. We might say they really value, you know, being able to see multiple angles of the clothing on a model, a person who looks similar to them. So my recommendation at the end would be to attract, name that group, Dear 72 should include photos of products on a model who, and then you could even like describe the basic body type if you wanted to. So they might be more slender, something like that. Okay, so that's the basic structure, and then once you make your recommendation, you're ready to move on to the next paragraph. So I just want to mention real quick that this paragraph is also missing a premise. So it is okay. Most of the time in our writing process, we don't know what our premise is until after we've written the rest of the paragraph. So I often tell students to draft their premise last. So write your evidence, figure out what you're saying, then move your cursor up to the beginning and write your premise. You still put the premise first, but you just draft it last. It's a lot easier to introduce your argument when you actually know what you are arguing. The other thing I want to point out here, the last thing I want to point out is evidence. Okay, so the latest e-commerce report from the US Department of Commerce, that is the source of this 14.7% and 1.4%, which is great data. It's great evidence, but I don't know exactly where this information is coming from. Yes, it's coming from the US Department of Commerce, but I don't know what the most recent commerce report it's referring to. You don't know when your reader is going to read this. So this is actually not the correct citation method. I'm not sure what citation method this is supposed to be because APA, MLA, and Chicago style are all slightly different. So I'm going to shift over to our other example very briefly. So it's the Milk Tea House example here, this PDF, just to point something out. So here in the very first section, you notice this citation here. This at least gives me the basic information of the source, and here's the page number. And then there is a works cited page in the last page of this report. So make sure that you are, that first you select a citation style that you like. It doesn't matter to me which one you use, but make sure you apply it accurately and consistently, okay? And there are plenty of resources talking about how to do that. Okay, so thank you so much for looking at my video on opportunities. I hope this was helpful, and if so, that you'll check out my others. Good luck.